Hello everyone, my name is Oak Vichayko and I'm the Associate Director and Pre-Law Coordinator at UNLV. I am associated with the College of Liberal Arts, but I also advise students from across campus on pre-law. So one of the main duties that I have is to make sure to connect students with a variety of different pre-law resources. This can vary from LSAT prep, bringing different law schools on campus to present to our students, a law fair connecting them with our mock trial team or internships. All these things will be on a flyer that's included in our shared folder, which should be distributed by our CSN UNLV transfer advisors. I also help students understand the daily work of what a lawyer does. So many times students will come to me with an idea of what they think a lawyer does. And so I like to kind of show this slide because it does kind of illustrate kind of a lot of the misconceptions that students think of when they think of a lawyer, because a lot of times what they think a lawyer does is what they see in the media or what's portrayed in the news and so forth. So I quickly have to also explain to them that most of the time you will not be in a courtroom arguing cases. Oftentimes you'll be just doing a lot of paperwork, doing a lot of research, doing a lot of writing, and doing a lot of interviewing of different clients and people associated with the case. So that's one of the other things that I do as well. Additionally, a main part of my job and a majority of what students come to me for is to assist them with the law school application. And this can be handled mostly through the LSAC, which is the Law School Admission Council, which again I'll include different flyers and information brochures on that as well for distribution. But most of the time, a lot of students aren't aware of all the different components that are needed to go to law school. And so I assist them with the entire process of when to take the LSAT, how to get your letters of recommendation, personal statement reviews, all those types of things that all go into the application process. One of the questions I get asked a lot of times is, if I want to go to law school, what should I major in? And the answer to that is whatever you want to, because law schools don't have any specific major that they require, and the American Bar Association, American Bar Association has made this very clear as well on their website, is that they don't recommend any specific undergraduate major or courses or anything specific to go to law school, because they want law schools to admit students from all different academic disciplines, different majors, and different backgrounds. They want to develop a very robust legal community, and so they want to encourage students to be from all different types of backgrounds, different age groups, different ethnicities. So the more diversity they have in the legal community, the better off the entire legal community will be. With that being said, if we look at some data that's provided by the Law School Admission Council, we're going to focus in specifically on the total number of applicants. So this list is ranked by the total number of applicants, and if we look at that, 18% goes to political science. So that particular group of students, that major, is actually more than the next 3 or 4 majors combined. If we look a little bit to the right there, number of applicants, you'll see that they have 12,000, and the next groups, will have 3,857 for criminal justice, 3,778 for psychology, 3,549 for English. And so you can see political science does have the largest representation when it comes to law school applications, but that doesn't necessarily mean that being a political science major is required or needed to be something you do to go to law school. It's just that they just have a higher number of students apply, and therefore they also have a higher number of students who are accepted to law school. But it shouldn't be interpreted as if you become a political science major, then you will have a better chance of getting into law school. So I have mentioned the LSAT briefly here, but I just want to go over this because this is probably, in my opinion, the most important part of the whole admissions process, because it does dictate so much of the whole process in terms of admissions and financial aid and a lot of other things as well. So it does take a large part of a student's time because they do have to study and prepare for it. And so students oftentimes aren't really certain about what the LSAT is, or they think it's just another standardized test that they have to take in order to get to the next stage of the admissions process. But the LSAT is kind of a unique test in terms that even though it is called the law school admission test, it doesn't actually ask any questions with regards to the law. It's really more of a test that is a diagnostic of certain abilities. And so the different sections of the LSAT are logical reasoning, analytical reasoning, a writing sample, which is not scored, but it is part of the LSAT, and reading comprehension. And so those are the three components of the LSAT, the four components of the LSAT, with the writing sample not being scored. And so one way I like to remember these different parts is just take the first letters of each of those and kind of spell out lawyer. That's kind of an easy way to remember the different parts of the LSAT. And I've included some LSAT brochures in here as well, so you can kind of look over that and read more about the different types of questions and stuff like that. But if we look at LSAT scores in terms of ranking, which is also interesting, so if we go back really quickly here and we see the different majors in terms of the number and percentage of applicants who have applied, we'll see political science, criminal justice, psychology, English, history, economics, philosophy. So mostly the social sciences are highly represented in the total number of overall applications. So if we kind of skip over again, back to the next slide here, and we compare just LSAT score. So this is a ranking of LSAT scores, the highest LSAT score in terms of major. And we can see that the subjects are vastly different. So we have statistics, mathematics, physics, astronomy, computer science, all the hard sciences. Those students tend to test a little higher overall on the LSAT. Now again, it doesn't mean that you should be a statistics major or go into math or physics or computer science to go to law school. It's just that these students who happen to be in this major decided to go to law school, so they took the LSAT. If we look at the total number of applicants about 2 columns over, you'll see the number of statistics majors is 2 compared to the 10,000, 12,000 that were political science. And mathematics, 293. Physics, 122 applicants. Astronomy, 9. And so again, I just like to show these things off just so you can kind of see kind of the different data points with regards to major and LSAT score. So something I want to also address is in terms of the LSAT and the way it's being administered this particular cycle, because due to COVID-19 they've had to kind of cancel all the in-person tests, so they had to start offering what's called the LSAT Flex. So the LSAT Flex is basically the LSAT, but now instead of going in person to take the LSAT, it is taken remotely. So students can now take the LSAT at home. They don't have to go anywhere. They just take it from the convenience of their own computer in their own room. So it's a lot less stressful than having to do a test site, checking in, doing all the rigmarole that's associated with standardized tests. So now they can do it from home. Now, for those of you who've been following the LSAT went pretty much digital last year, so it was pretty much an easy transition to make. Fortunately, they didn't have to go from paper to digital quickly. They already made that transition about a year ago, so fortunately for everybody, they didn't have to make such an abrupt change. The nice thing about the LSAT Flex is that you have 4 days to choose from. So you don't have to do it on a specific day, but it's basically during a week, and the days of the week change, but you get to pick. So if you take it in October, the October LSAT is a specific week, and then you get to choose 4 days that they've specified that you can take the test that day. The same in November, it could be Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. In January, it could be, again, Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, or something like that. So it's going to change, but it does give students a lot of flexibility in terms of when they can take the LSAT now. One of the big changes with the LSAT Flex is that they reduced the number of test sections. So on the paper LSAT, or the in-person LSAT, because it's no longer paper, there were 4 sections with a section reserved to for the LSAT to ask test questions for future LSAT questions. So it was unscored, but it was used to test out possible questions for future LSATs. So the LSAT Flex doesn't have that, so that's nice. So there's no guessing in terms of, okay, if I got 2 sections that were exactly the same, which one was scored? Students would not know this information typically. Now, because it's just reduced to the 3 sections plus the writing sample, students know that each section is going to be scored. There's no second guessing as to, okay, I got 2 writing sections, or excuse me, 2 reading comprehension sections, and one of them was scored, one of them was not. So that alleviates some of that stress as well. So it makes the overall test less stressful and shorter for the student as well. So students obviously have to have some monitoring software installed on their computer. So that's through ProctorU. So students will have to sign up for an account and do that through ProctorU as well. And one of the other things that the LSAC, the Law School Admission Council, is doing with regards to the LSAT is that first-time test takers can purchase what is called a score preview. And so to just go backwards a little bit, if you were to take the test in person on that day, and at the end of the testing day you felt like you just did not do very well on the test, so you totally bombed the test, you knew you didn't do well, you can cancel the test, but you have to do so before you leave the testing center and before the test is scored. So you wouldn't know what your score is, but you would have a general sense that, okay, I didn't feel like I did well, so I'm going to cancel my score, and you have to do that before you leave the testing center. With the score preview, what they're allowing students to do, if this is your first LSAT, and this only applies to the first LSAT you take using the LSAT Flex, so in this particular application LSAT cycle that you're taking at home, you have to purchase what's called a score preview. So if you purchase a score preview, which is I think $75, they'll allow you to see your score, and then you have 7 days to cancel your score. So again, this is only for first-time test takers. So if this is your only first time taking it, then you can take the test, purchase a score preview. Once you see your score, if you're happy with it, great, you're good to go. If you're not happy with it, then you can cancel that score and then register for another LSAT. After that, though, you can't use the score preview anymore. You're pretty much set. If you take the LSAT Flex, whatever score you get, that's going to be reported. If you want to cancel it, you have to cancel it before you get your score back. So that's a big change, actually. Another change too, and this was actually back last year when they made the change to the digital LSAT, is that writing sample can be done on a different day, so you don't have to do the writing sample on that specific day of the LSAT. You do have to do it within a certain time frame of the LSAT, but also you only need to do one writing sample overall, meaning if you take the LSAT multiple times, you only have to do the writing sample once. You don't have, so if you're going to retake the LSAT, they're not going to make you do the writing sample. Your writing sample is pretty much good for as many LSATs that you want to take. They're not going to make you do a new writing sample each time, which is great. Okay, and obviously this will continue until further notice, like everything else, until we know what's going on with the different parts of the country with regards to COVID-19. So they're going to keep this going until further notice. So one thing I thought that might be interesting and break up the monotony of these video presentations is to have you do a sample LSAT question. So this is what they call a logic game. It's actually an analytical reasoning, but it's more popularly referred to as a logic game. And so what we'll go ahead and do is, if you're watching this video or if you're in a big group, however this is being presented, go ahead and pause this. You typically, with this number of questions, you'll have about 4 or 5 minutes. So take 4 or 5 minutes, read the question, pause the video, and come back in about 5 minutes, and then we'll kind of go over the answers. Okay, so now we're back. So now I'll just kind of go over this really quickly here. So logic games will give you a set of premises and a set of rules, and then you have to kind of apply those rules and then answer the questions here. Usually there's about 3 or 4 questions per logic game, and you have about 8 or 9 minutes to answer each question if you want to be able to get to every single logic game. So you don't have a lot of time. So the key to the logic game is to be able to read the rules, set up kind of your chart, your diagram, your graph, however you want to do it, and be able to answer the questions as quickly as possible. So diagramming is the most important part of the logic game, because if you diagram it right and correctly, then the answer should be very clear very quickly. So let's just go through this real quickly. I'll go as quickly as I can. So the first line, the codes use the digits 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and no other. So that's just stating, okay, these are the numbers used. Sometimes they'll use names or they'll use colors. It's always going to be something like that. Second rule, each digit occurs exactly once in this code. And that's a pretty standard rule that pretty much applies to all logic games. All that means is it's not going to repeat. There's no repeating digits or numbers or letters or something like that. Otherwise, it would get very confusing. Okay, so really no diagramming at this part. It's just giving you the numbers and that it's not repeating. And then the third rule here is the second digit has a value exactly twice that of the first digit. So now we can start diagramming a little bit here. So we know we have 5 numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so it's saying that the second digit has a value exactly twice of that first digit. So there's a couple ways to diagram this. The way I like to do this is kind of mathematically, knowing that, okay, that second digit is always going to be twice the value of that first digit. Okay. The value of the third digit is less than the value of the fifth digit. Again, same thing here. I would draw a connecting line of some sort. I like to do an arch in case I need to write something else underneath it. And then a little less than sign saying that this number is always going to be less than the fifth digit. Okay, so that's diagramming those two specific rules onto a little chart here on the right hand side. So if we read the first one, if the last digit in an acceptable product code is 1, it must be true that the what? Fourth digit is 4, second digit is 0, third digit is 3, first digit is 2, fourth digit is 0. Okay. So if we look at this graph, we just kind of plug in the numbers and see what would work, right? So normally you would say, okay, if the fourth digit is 4, where's every other number going to go? Can 1 be in the beginning? If the second digit is 0, does that break a rule? So if we kind of go line by line, we can kind of start eliminating things, right? But I want to show you something that's kind of the trick of the logic games, is that even though they give you these rules, you have to imply additional rules as well and update your graph. If you don't, this is where most students will kind of waste a lot of time, because you're going to literally go through and try every one of these scenarios A through E, which wastes a lot of time. So let's look at that third rule. The second digit has a value exactly twice that of the first digit. So we know there's a finite number of digits, right? So if we know there's a finite number of digits, we know that there's only a finite number set of numbers that can fit into these first two spots, right? Because we know that 0, 2 times 0 is 0. So 0 is never going to be that first digit. If we put in a 1, we know that. Then if we put a 1 in, that second digit is going to be a 2, right? If we put in a 2, does that work? Well, yes, 2 times 2 is 4, so 2 and 4 will work. If you put in a 3, 3 times 2 is 6, so 6 is not part of the number, so we know that the first two numbers, no matter what, in any scenario, is always going to be a 1, 2, or start with a 2, 4. Okay, so now that we've updated this graph, we can go back to this really quickly and say, okay, it has to be a 1, 2, or 2, 4. Do any of these answers make sense? If you pick D, sorry, we forgot to update, sorry, go back here. We forgot to update the fourth rule here. The fourth rule also implies something else. It means the third digit is less than the fifth digit. So that means you can't have a 4 there, because if you put a 4 there, you can't have any other digits that are less than that, right? So that's why 4 can't go in that third spot. Okay, sorry. Now we're going to go back to that first question. So the answer is going to be D, because that follows the rule, right? The first digit is 2. We can see that right from the graph. So right there, you can see how diagramming everything out really helps you get to an answer much more quickly than trying all the different scenarios and wasting a lot of time. For this second question, any of the following pairs could be the third and fourth digit respectively of an acceptable product code except A, 01, B, 03, C, 10, D, 30, or E, 3, 4. Okay. So this one is not one you can kind of discern easily. You kind of do have to kind of plug these ones. So this is one where you would have to spend a little bit of time in going through and plugging everything in. And so the answer to this one is E, 3, 4. So this is one where you'd have to kind of plug these in and see where all the other numbers go. So that implied rule of the fourth one, where there's the third spot can't be a number 4, that applies to additional questions that I did include on this because I just wanted to kind of go over the first 2 questions. I think there were a total of 4 questions that apply to this logic game. So this, it would actually help in a different section, but I wanted to kind of illustrate kind of the thought process that you have to do when you go through a logic game. So hopefully that helped you out. Hopefully you had a little bit of fun with that. So you can kind of see the different kind of the difficulty that students have with this one. This is probably the most difficult part for students to kind of grasp because it is kind of unlike any other test, and there's really no major or discipline or courses that you can take. You just have to practice these and just get better. So it's just kind of like math. You just have to practice this to get better at it. So I hope you had fun with that. Again, my name is Oak Vichaykel. I am the Associate Director and Pre-Law Coordinator at UNLV. So hopefully if you do have any questions, there's my email, prelaw@unlv.edu. Hopefully you got some information out of this, and I hope you all have a good day.